My name is Rebecca Hale, and I never thought my marriage would end at an airport gate with strangers watching. I believed loyalty was built quietly, over years, not tested in public. But one morning, I saw the truth I'd been avoiding, and in that moment, everything changed. And before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe. You're not going to want to miss what comes next. I didn't come to the airport looking for answers. I came because my husband said he was flying out early for a client emergency, and I was already halfway to work when I realized his laptop charger was still on the kitchen counter. He never traveled without it. Ever. 14 years together had taught me that. So I turned the car around. San Diego International was loud in that clean, echoing way airports always are. Rolling suitcases, boarding announcements, families hugging too long. I spotted him before I even parked. Caleb. Tall, familiar posture, navy jacket I'd bought him last Christmas. He was standing near the southwest counter, phone in hand, smiling. Not at his screen. At her. She stood close. Too close. A blonde woman in a beige trench coat, one hand resting casually on the handle of his carry-on like it belonged to her. She laughed, leaned in, touched his arm. Not awkward, not tentative, comfortable, intimate, rehearsed. My body went cold before my brain caught up. I walked toward them without thinking. Every step felt unreal, like my feet weren't touching the ground. He turned just as I was a few feet away, and for half a second, just one, I saw panic flash across his face. Then it vanished. "Rebecca," he said, flat. Not shocked, not guilty. Annoyed. "What are you doing here?" I looked at her. She looked back at me, eyes scanning my face like I was the inconvenience, not the wife. I noticed details I wish I hadn't. The gold ring on her finger that wasn't a wedding band, the expensive boots, the confidence. This wasn't her first airport goodbye. "I brought your charger," I said, holding it up. My voice sounded steady. I didn't feel steady. He sighed. Actually sighed, like I'd interrupted a meeting. "That wasn't necessary," he said. "I already told you this trip was complicated." Complicated. I turned to her. "Do you work with my husband?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second, then smiled politely. Too politely. "Yes, we're on the same project." I waited for him to say something. Anything. To explain. To correct her. To look ashamed. Instead, he stepped slightly in front of her, like he was shielding her from me. "Rebecca," he said quietly, "this isn't the place." That was the moment something in me cracked clean in half. "This isn't the place?" I repeated. "You're boarding the same flight with another woman and this isn't the place?" Heads turned. A couple nearby stopped talking. I felt heat rise in my neck, but I didn't lower my voice. I was done shrinking. He leaned closer, his tone sharp. "You're embarrassing yourself." There it was. Not denial, not remorse, contempt. She shifted behind him, suddenly very interested in her phone. "How long?" I asked. He didn't answer. I laughed then, one sharp sound that surprised even me. "Let me guess. This trip, the last one, the late nights, the weekends you said you were catching up." "Rebecca," he snapped. "Stop." I looked at the departure board. Same flight number, same destination, same boarding group. "You booked seats together," I said. He finally lost his composure. "So what if I did?" The words hit harder than any slap could have. "So what?" I repeated. I nodded slowly. "That's your answer?" He glanced around again, jaw tight. "I'm not doing this here." "Of course not," I said. "Because here, people can see you." Security was watching now. A gate agent pretended not to listen while listening very carefully. I turned to her one last time. "You should know," I said calmly. "He's married. He has a daughter. He lies easily." Her face flushed. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Caleb grabbed my arm. "We're done talking." I pulled away. "Don't touch me." His voice dropped to a hiss. "You're overreacting." That's when I knew. Not suspected. not feared. Knew. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and stepped back. "You're right," I said. "We are done talking." I turned and walked away before he could say another word, before I could cry, before I could break. My hands shook as I pushed through the sliding doors into the parking structure. The noise dulled. The air smelled like oil and concrete. I leaned against my car and finally let myself breathe. Then I made the call. "Hi," I said when the line connected. "I need you to freeze everything. Accounts, access, all of it. Today." A pause. Then, "Rebecca, are you sure?" I pictured him at the gate, boarding with her, thinking he still controlled the narrative, thinking I'd go home and wait. "I've never been more sure of anything," I said. I ended the call and sat in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel until the shaking stopped. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't chase him through the terminal. I drove home. But as I pulled onto the freeway, one thought repeated in my mind, clear and sharp as glass. He humiliated me in public. And I was going to return the favor, slowly, deliberately, and in full view of everyone who ever believed him. Before that morning at the airport, I would have told you my marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real. Caleb and I met when I was 23. He was charming in a restless way, full of plans that never quite landed. I was the opposite, organized, grounded. I worked 2 jobs through grad school, paid off my loans early, and bought my first condo before I turned 30. When we married, I sold it and rolled the equity into our life together, because that's what partnership meant to me. He called it our foundation. I called it trust. When he bounced between roles, startups, consulting contracts, half-formed ideas, I covered the gaps. I told myself it was temporary. That ambition sometimes needed space to fail before it could succeed. I paid the mortgage during his dry spells, handled the taxes, kept our credit clean. When our daughter, Ava, was born, I took a shorter maternity leave than planned because his income still wasn't stable. I told myself love was patience. The first warning signs didn't look like betrayal. They looked like distance. Late nights framed as opportunity. Business trips that increased without a raise to show for them. A phone that never left his hand. When I asked questions, he laughed and said I was being paranoid. "Do you want me to succeed or not?" he'd ask. So I stopped asking. The money shifted first, not disappearing, just moving. Expenses I didn't recognize. Cards paid off too fast, then slowly. I noticed because I managed everything. He always said numbers stressed him out. I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to. Then there was the emotional absence. He stopped telling me things, stopped venting, stopped sharing small frustrations. He was still there physically, but the intimacy thinned out, like a voice fading on a bad connection. I told myself this was marriage in your late 30s, work, parenting, fatigue. The truth is, I was protecting the image of us more than the reality. What he never seemed to remember was that part of our stability wasn't just my salary, it was my family. My father had passed 2 years before the airport incident, and the inheritance he left me was modest but meaningful. It paid down the mortgage significantly. The account was in my name only. Caleb liked to joke that my dad was our silent partner. He wasn't joking. That money wasn't just financial. It was security for Ava. A future I refused to gamble with. The day after the airport, the house felt wrong. Too quiet. His shoes still by the door, his coffee mug in the sink. Evidence of a life I now knew had been split in 2. I didn't cry right away. I cleaned. I made Ava's lunch. I answered emails. I moved through the hours like muscle memory was carrying me. It was Ava who broke me. She came home from school and asked, "Why didn't Dad FaceTime me last night?" I told her he was busy, the same lie I'd been telling myself. She nodded, then said something that landed like a punch. "He FaceTimed from the hotel the other time. With the lady." My chest tightened. "What lady?" "The one from his work. She waved at me once. He said she was helping him." My vision blurred. When was this? A while ago, she said. I didn't tell you because he said it was just work and you'd get mad. I sat down hard on the couch. Children don't invent patterns. They notice them. Later that night, I called my sister. She'd always been skeptical of Caleb in the way siblings sometimes are, but she never pushed. I told her everything. Airport, accounts, Ava. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Rebecca, this isn't new. This is just the first time you saw it clearly. She forwarded me something I hadn't known existed. A message thread she'd received by mistake months earlier. Caleb congratulating someone on a successful trip. Jokes, familiarity, the kind that doesn't belong to coworkers. I stared at the screen until the words stopped blurring. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a lapse. It was a parallel life built on my silence. That night, after Ava fell asleep, I stood in the hallway and looked at our family photos. Vacations. Birthdays. Smiles I now questioned. I didn't feel rage yet. I felt resolve, because betrayal isn't just about sex or secrecy. It's about stealing someone's time, labor, and trust, and assuming they won't notice until it's too late. He had assumed wrong. And now that I knew the truth wasn't accidental, I stopped treating it gently. I didn't wake up angry. That surprised me. I woke up clear. The fog that had lived in my chest for months was gone, replaced by something sharp and steady. There was no more wondering if I was wrong. No more replaying conversations to see if I'd imagined things. The truth had already shown itself. My job now was execution. I dropped Ava at school like it was any other morning. I kissed her forehead, told her I loved her, and waited until she was inside before sitting in my car and opening my notes app. I made a list. Not an emotional one, a practical one. First, control the money. The call I'd made at the airport wasn't symbolic. By noon, joint accounts were frozen pending review. Automatic transfers stopped. Credit card limits were reduced. I opened a new account in my name only and moved my salary there. Clean, legal, documented. Second, legal counsel. I didn't ask for recommendations. I already had one. A woman my sister had used years earlier. Quiet, ruthless, precise. We spoke for 40 minutes. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she said, "You're early. That's good. We can work with early." By the end of the call, we had a plan. Financial separation, custody positioning, asset protection. No threats, no scenes, paper trails. Third, the house. I stood in the living room and looked at the walls I'd painted, the furniture I'd chosen, the home I'd held together. Then I emailed a realtor. Subject line, confidential. Timeline, immediate. Fourth, logistics. I boxed his things that night. Not dramatically, methodically. Clothes, shoes, files. Everything that belonged to him went into labeled boxes in the garage. I didn't break anything. I didn't keep souvenirs. I didn't need reminders. By the time Caleb's flight landed, the locks were changed. I didn't block him. That was intentional. The first call came while I was cooking dinner. "Why can't I access the account?" he demanded. No greeting, no concern. "What did you do?" "I secured my finances," I said calmly. "Our finances," he corrected. I turned the stove down. "No, mine." There was a pause. I could hear airport noise behind him, confusion creeping in. "You had no right," he said. "I have every right," I replied. "You just never thought I'd use it." The second call came 10 minutes later. Softer tone, controlled. "Rebecca, let's not do anything we can't undo." I almost laughed. "You already did," I said. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks. The next morning, I forwarded documentation to my lawyer. Screenshots, statements, timelines. She replied with one sentence. "Good. Keep going." I pulled Ava's school records, set up a meeting with a counselor, documented routines, stability matters, judges notice patterns. Caleb showed up at the house that afternoon. I saw him through the camera app before I heard the knock. He looked tired, unshaven, carry-on still in hand like he'd expected to walk back into his old life. I opened the door but didn't step aside. "What is this?" he asked, gesturing to the boxes behind me. "Your things," I said. "You should take them." "This is insane," he snapped. "You're blowing up our family." I held his gaze. "You did that. I'm just cleaning up." He lowered his voice. "She doesn't mean anything." I smiled then, just slightly. "That's worse." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then again. His expression shifted. "What else did you do?" he asked. I leaned against the doorframe, already moving past him emotionally. I started. And as he stood there, realizing he was no longer ahead of the story, I closed the door, not on a marriage, but on the version of myself who ever waited for permission. The first real consequence didn't hit him emotionally. It hit his access. By the second morning after he returned, Caleb couldn't pay for coffee. His card declined at the cafe he went to every weekday. He tried another. Same result. He called the bank. They told him the account was under review and to contact the primary holder. That was me. I didn't answer. He left 3 voicemails in under an hour. The first angry, the second confused, the third careful. Meanwhile, I was sitting in my lawyer's office signing documents that formally separated our finances. Calm, quiet, efficient. I felt like I was stepping through doors that had been unlocked long ago. I'd just never pushed them. By noon, he realized this wasn't temporary. He showed up at his office that afternoon expecting normalcy. What he found instead was distance. Conversations cut short. A meeting he was supposed to lead reassigned until further notice. His access badge didn't work on the executive floor. Someone from HR asked him to stop by when he had a moment. He called me again. I still didn't answer. Because the other consequence had already started. The woman from the airport, her name was Lauren, I finally learned, wasn't as insulated as she'd thought. She wasn't a senior executive. She was visible. And visibility cuts both ways. By the end of the day, she'd been quietly removed from the project they shared. Officially for conflict of interest. Unofficially because people talk, and airports have witnesses, and someone had posted a photo online. Nothing dramatic, just 2 people boarding together. Familiar, close, tagged location, time-stamped. The caption wasn't cruel. It didn't need to be. People filled in the blanks on their own. That evening, Caleb sent a text instead of calling. "We need to talk. This is getting out of control." I replied with one sentence. "You lost control the moment you assumed I wouldn't act." He showed up again the next day, this time without knocking. I heard him yelling through the door, pacing on the porch like the house still belonged to him. "Rebecca, this is ridiculous. I can't even get gas." I opened the door just enough to be heard. "Then I suggest you budget better," I said. He stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Maybe he was. "You're punishing me," he said. "You're hurting Ava." I stepped outside then, not angry, not shaking. "Don't use our daughter to excuse your choices," I said quietly. "That won't work anymore." His phone buzzed again. He checked it, face draining. "What now?" I asked. "They reassigned my role," he said. "Temporarily. Funny how temporary keeps becoming permanent," I said. That night, my sister called. "People are asking questions," she said. "Your name came up, not in a bad way." I wasn't surprised. Stories shift when the wrong person is underestimated. By the end of the week, Caleb had moved into a short-term rental he couldn't afford long-term. Lauren stopped returning his calls. Her social media went silent. Her profile picture disappeared. Mutual friends stopped checking in on him and started checking on me. "How are you holding up?" they asked. I answered honestly. "I'm handling it." Caleb didn't handle it well. He sent long messages late at night. Apologies mixed with blame, regret tangled with self-pity. He promised therapy. He promised transparency. He promised anything that sounded like a reset. What he didn't understand was that consequences don't negotiate. They arrive. They settle in. They rearrange lives. The final consequence of that first week came quietly. Ava handed me her tablet one morning and said, "Dad keeps texting me asking if I'm mad at him." My jaw tightened. I took the tablet, blocked his number on her device, and documented it. When I looked up, Ava was watching me carefully. "You're not mad," she said. "You're done." I nodded. Outside, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Caleb. "Please, just let me explain. I'll come by tonight." I stared at the screen, then typed my reply. No. And for the first time since the airport, I felt it fully. The ground beneath him was gone, and he was finally starting to fall. The second confrontation didn't happen by accident. It happened because Caleb still believed he could manage optics. 2 weeks after the airport, Ava's school held its annual fundraising reception. One of those polished evening events with parents in blazers, teachers making small talk, donors sipping wine under string lights. Caleb had been a visible parent there for years. He volunteered. He liked being seen as dependable. He assumed I wouldn't show up. I did. I arrived on time, dressed simply, greeted people by name, spoke to Ava's teacher, and signed the donation sheet without hesitation. I wasn't there to cause a scene. I was there to remove a mask. Caleb spotted me halfway through the evening. I saw it in his posture first. The stiffening, the way his shoulders squared like he was bracing for impact. He crossed the courtyard quickly, putting on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Rebecca," he said too loud. "We should talk." "Here?" I asked lightly. "You're sure?" He glanced around. Parents were close, staff members within earshot. "Just for a minute," he said, already reaching for my elbow. I stepped back. "That's not appropriate," I said. A few heads turned. He swallowed, recalibrated. "You've been ignoring me. I just want to explain." I nodded. "Okay." Relief flashed across his face. He leaned in, lowering his voice. "You're taking this too far. People are starting to think—" "Think what?" I asked, just loud enough. "That I did something wrong," he said. I let the silence sit. It stretched. Someone nearby shifted uncomfortably. "You boarded a flight with your coworker," I said evenly. "You shared hotel stays. You hid finances. You involved our daughter without my knowledge." His smile cracked. "Rebecca," he hissed. "This is not the time." "You're right," I said. "It's overdue." A woman I recognized from the parent council slowed her steps nearby. A teacher paused mid-conversation. Caleb tried one last angle. "Do you really want to do this in front of everyone?" I met his eyes. "You didn't mind doing it in front of everyone at the airport. That did it." He laughed nervously. "You're twisting things." I shook my head once. "No, I'm correcting the story." He opened his mouth, probably to deny again, but I didn't let him. "I supported your career when you couldn't," I said. "I funded our life when your plans fell through. I protected your image while you built another one with someone else." His face flushed red. A few people had stopped pretending not to listen. "You didn't just cheat," I continued. "You outsourced your integrity and expected me to keep managing the consequences." The courtyard was silent now. Caleb's voice dropped. "Please, stop." I smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly. Just finished. "You should know," I said, turning slightly so others could hear. "The reason our accounts are frozen and your access was revoked isn't because I'm emotional." I paused. "It's because I'm done financing a man who lies in public and panics in private." Someone gasped softly. Caleb looked around, realizing too late that this wasn't a private argument. This was a reframe. "I need to go," he muttered, backing away. "That's usually how it ends for you," I said. He left the courtyard without another word, eyes down, shoulders hunched. Conversations resumed slowly, cautiously, like people adjusting after a power outage. Ava's teacher touched my arm gently. "She's lucky to have you," she said. I nodded, throat tight, but steady. Later that night, my phone buzzed. A message from Caleb. "You humiliated me." I typed back one sentence and put the phone face down. "No. I stopped covering for you." And that was the moment the story stopped belonging to him at all. Caleb didn't disappear after the school fundraiser. He pivoted. Within 48 hours, I started hearing about it through other people. A friend forwarded me a message he'd sent in a group chat. Carefully worded, almost impressive in its restraint. He was heartbroken. He was confused. He was trying to protect his family from unnecessary damage. The implication was clear without being stated. I was unstable, emotional, overreacting. He told people I'd locked him out without warning, that I was withholding access out of spite, that I was making things harder than they needed to be. What he didn't say was why. At first it worked, a little. People like a calm man with sad eyes. They trust him more than a woman who's already been hurt. I noticed the shift immediately. A few friends stopped texting as often. One mutual acquaintance asked if I was doing okay, in that careful tone people use when they're evaluating you. I didn't defend myself. I documented every message, every voicemail, every contradiction. Caleb kept talking. He always did. He couldn't help himself. He sent emails trying to negotiate outside legal channels. He sent texts asking to reset and start fresh. When I didn't respond, his tone shifted again. "You're destroying me," one message read. "You're being vindictive," said another. "You'll regret this when people find out the truth." That last one almost made me smile. Because by then, the truth was already assembled. The escalation didn't come from me raising my voice. It came from releasing weight. My lawyer advised patience. "Let him finish building his version," she said. "Then we'll introduce reality." Reality came in the form of receipts, not screenshots posted online, not dramatic exposés, just facts, placed where facts belong. A timeline submitted with the divorce filing, shared trips overlapping with work conferences, expense reports that didn't match itineraries, messages that showed coordination, secrecy, familiarity, evidence of financial maneuvering that contradicted his claims of transparency. The filing itself wasn't public spectacle. The reaction was. Someone leaked the existence of it. No names, no details, just enough to spark curiosity. The phrase "airport incident" started appearing in whispers. Someone who had been there posted anonymously about a man getting confronted by his wife at the gate. The comments did the rest. People connected dots. Names weren't necessary. Context was. Caleb tried to regain control by going visible. He posted a long statement online about navigating private challenges and choosing dignity. That was his mistake. Because dignity doesn't invite scrutiny. That post did. Within hours, people started asking questions he couldn't answer without contradicting himself. Why the sudden financial separation? Why HR involvement? Why the reassignment? Why was the woman from his project no longer employed there? Lauren resurfaced briefly then, just long enough to post a vague quote about protecting mental health before deleting her account entirely. She didn't defend him. That silence spoke louder than anything I could have said. Caleb called me that night, frantic. "This is getting out of hand," he said. "People are assuming things. People are noticing patterns," I replied. "You need to make a statement," he insisted. "Clarify." "I already did," I said. "When?" "When I stopped lying," I answered. He lost his temper then, accused me of orchestrating everything, of feeding rumors, of enjoying his downfall. I listened, let him talk himself into circles. When he finally stopped, I said, "You wanted the story controlled. You just didn't want me holding the pen." The next escalation came from a place he didn't expect. A colleague of his, someone senior, someone respected, reached out to me privately. Not for gossip, for confirmation. "I need to know if there's anything else I should be aware of before this goes further," she wrote. I forwarded the message to my lawyer. We responded formally, briefly, with documentation. 2 days later, Caleb's consulting contract was terminated. No announcement, no spectacle. Just a calendar invite disappearing and an access badge deactivated. The final blow of that phase wasn't professional, it was social. At a mutual friends gathering, a dinner I didn't attend, someone asked Caleb point blank if he'd lied about the timeline, if he'd involved his daughter. If the airport story was true, he denied, then hesitated, then deflected. And that hesitation, that flicker of uncertainty, was enough, because once people see it, they can't unsee it. By the end of the week, the narrative had flipped. Not because I argued, because his version couldn't survive daylight. The man who once controlled rooms now avoided them. Invitations slowed. Calls went unanswered. His name stopped being spoken with certainty. He texted me late one night. "I don't recognize my life anymore." I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. That's what happens when the truth finally catches up. And for the first time since this began, I understood something clearly. This wasn't revenge yet. This was exposure, and it was only the beginning. The legal fallout didn't explode all at once. It dismantled him piece by piece. By the time Caleb realized the divorce filing wasn't leverage but a locked trajectory, it was already too late to redirect. The paperwork was precise. Dates aligned. Assets were clearly traced. Inheritance funds were separated, protected, and documented long before he'd ever tried to blur lines. The first hearing wasn't dramatic. No raised voices, no courtroom theatrics. Just facts read aloud while he sat rigid beside his attorney, flipping through pages that told a story he no longer controlled. He kept glancing at me like I might interrupt it, like I might soften it. I didn't. The judge asked questions. My lawyer answered calmly. His lawyer attempted reframes that collapsed under timelines. When custody was discussed, there was no fight to watch. Ava's routines, schooling, medical history, and emotional stability were already documented. Primary custody was granted without hesitation. Caleb's jaw tightened when he heard it. He'd assumed access to our daughter was untouchable. That being a father protected him. It didn't. It simply held him to a higher standard. Financially, the unraveling accelerated fast. The house went on the market under conditions he couldn't contest. His objections were noted, then dismissed. The equity split reflected contribution, not entitlement. His assumption that marriage means half dissolved under records he hadn't expected me to keep. The inheritance account never even entered negotiation. When his lawyer tried to argue commingling, mine slid documentation across the table showing separate management, clear intent, and untouched principle. That conversation ended quickly. Caleb stopped posturing after that. The credit cards were closed one by one. His car, leased under favorable terms because of my credit, was repossessed when he missed payments. The short-term rental he'd moved into asked him to leave after unpaid fees stacked up. He tried to borrow from his brother. That door closed. I learned about it indirectly when his brother emailed me, not to ask for help but to apologize. "I didn't know," he wrote, "and I won't be enabling him anymore." Caleb's parents were next. They'd always liked me, trusted me. I'd been the steady one, the organizer, the one who remembered birthdays and handled logistics. When they learned the full scope, not just the affair, but the deception, the finances, Ava's involvement, their tone shifted. His father called him irresponsible. His mother cried and asked how long he'd been lying. They didn't disown him, but they withdrew support. No bailouts, no quiet loans, no covering gaps. For a man who'd always assumed someone would catch him before he hit the ground, that absence was devastating. Lauren didn't survive the fallout either. She resurfaced once, briefly, through a mutual acquaintance who thought I should know. Her contract ended quietly. References dried up. The industry wasn't kind to people who brought instability into workplaces and left messes behind. She reached out to Caleb once more, according to a message he sent me later in desperation. She says this ruined her life, he wrote. I didn't reply. The court scheduled mediation. He arrived with less confidence than before. Less anger, too. He looked tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Smaller. During a break, he tried one last maneuver. This doesn't have to destroy everything, he said quietly. We can be reasonable. I looked at him across the table. I am being reasonable. He blinked. I'm protecting my child, I continued. I'm separating finances responsibly. I'm following the law. That's not what I meant, he said. I know, I replied. The settlement finalized without drama. Assets distributed. Custody formalized. Support calculated based on actual income, not imagined potential. His objections were reduced to footnotes. When it was over, I felt no triumph, just relief. Caleb's final consequence came not from court, but from isolation. The man who once hosted dinners now ate alone. The one who relied on proximity and charm found himself without either. His social circle shrank. His professional identity eroded. His family kept distance. He texted less. When he did, it wasn't accusations anymore. It was confusion. I don't know where to go, one message said. I don't know who I am without this life, said another. I didn't answer. Because the truth was simple, even if it hurt. He'd spent years building himself on borrowed ground. My labor, my stability, my silence. When I withdrew it, there was nothing underneath. Ava adjusted faster than I expected. Children do. When they're finally safe from tension they didn't understand but always felt. She slept better. She laughed more. She stopped checking her phone for missed calls. One night, as I tucked her in, she looked at me and said, "You're different now." I smiled. Better or worse? She thought about it. Stronger. I turned off the light and stood in the hallway for a moment, letting that word settle. Strong enough to end it. Strong enough to walk away without watching him fall further. Because by then, the dismantling was complete. And there was nothing left to salvage but myself. The final confrontation didn't happen in a courtroom or a crowded place. It happened because Caleb asked for it. 3 weeks after the settlement finalized, he emailed me. Not a text, not a voicemail. An email, carefully written, polite in a way that felt unfamiliar now. I won't take much of your time. I just need to see you once, for closure. I didn't owe him that. But I agreed. Not for him. For myself. We met at a small cafe halfway between our old house and Ava's school. Neutral ground. Daytime. Public enough to keep things contained. Quiet enough to hear the truth when it finally surfaced. He was already there when I arrived, seated near the window. Thinner. Older. His jacket looked worn, like it had been slept in. When he saw me, he stood too quickly and knocked his chair back. "Rebecca," he said, voice unsteady. "Thank you for coming." I nodded and sat across from him. I didn't order anything. For a moment, he just looked at me. The way people do when they're trying to find a version of you that no longer exists. "You look different," he said. "I am," I replied. He swallowed. "I've had a lot of time to think." I waited. "I know I made mistakes," he began. "I handled things badly. I didn't mean for it to spiral like this." I leaned back slightly. "You didn't mean to get caught." His face tightened. "That's not fair." "No," I said calmly. "It's accurate." He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "I lost everything." I nodded once. "Yes. My job, my home, my family," he continued. "People won't even answer my calls anymore. That's what accountability feels like when you're not insulated from it," I said. He stared at the table, fingers twisting together. "I never wanted to hurt Ava. You involved her," I said quietly. "You just didn't think I'd find out." He flinched. "I didn't think—" "That's the problem," I interrupted gently. "You never did." Silence stretched between us. The cafe hummed softly around us, unaware of the years collapsing at that small table. I still love you, he said finally. I didn't react. I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't argue. I believe you believe that, I said. But love without respect is just need. He looked up then, eyes glossy. Is there really no way back? I took a breath, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to answer without cruelty. There was a way back, I said. It was called honesty. You passed it every day and chose something else. Tears slipped down his face. He didn't wipe them away. I don't recognize myself anymore, he whispered. I met his gaze fully then. I do. He looked startled. You're someone who confused being admired with being valued, I continued. Someone who borrowed stability and called it confidence. Someone who thought consequences were for other people. His shoulders sagged. I'm trying to fix myself. That's good, I said. Do it without me. He reached across the table, stopped himself halfway. Please, just tell me what to do. I stood. He looked up at me, panicked now. Rebecca. I picked up my bag. This is what I'm doing. I paused, not for effect, but for clarity. I'm choosing a life where I don't have to monitor someone else's integrity, I said. Where my daughter doesn't learn that love means enduring betrayal. Where silence isn't the cost of peace. His voice cracked. So that's it? I nodded. This was over long before the airport. That was just the moment I stopped pretending. I stepped back from the table. He stayed seated, hands limp, eyes following me like he expected me to turn around. I didn't. At the door I stopped once, not to look at him, but to say the last thing he would ever hear from me. You didn't lose me, I said evenly. You disqualified yourself. Then I walked out, sunlight hitting my face, the door closing softly behind me. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was stepping forward, unburdened, unafraid, and finally finished. A year passed without announcement. No milestone date circled in red. No dramatic after. Just time doing what it always does, revealing what lasts and what dissolves when no one is forcing it to stay. My life didn't transform overnight. It stabilized, and that turned out to be better. I moved Ava and myself into a smaller house near the ocean, not a downgrade, an alignment. Fewer rooms, more light, mornings where the air smelled clean, evenings where silence didn't feel tense. Ava picked her room and painted one wall a soft blue. She slept through the night there from the first week on. That's how I knew we'd chosen right. Work shifted too. I didn't chase promotions. I stopped proving things. I negotiated boundaries instead, and discovered how much respect followed when I did. My income grew quietly, steadily, without drama, without anyone siphoning confidence off it. I laughed more, not the polite kind, the real kind that catches you off guard. Ava changed in ways that mattered. Her teachers told me she spoke up more, asked questions, corrected people when they were wrong without apologizing first. She stopped checking her phone compulsively. She stopped asking if her father was mad at her. One night, months later, she said, I like our life. I said, me too. We meant it. Caleb faded, not in a tragic way, not in a way that demanded attention. He became background noise. Occasionally, someone would mention him in passing, always with uncertainty. He moved again, took short-term work, missed obligations, promised reinvention. No one argued with him anymore. No one waited. I saw him once from a distance at a grocery store. He didn't notice me. He looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, energetically. Like someone who had lost the mirror that told him who he was. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt neutrality. And that was the final transformation. Because revenge isn't about watching someone suffer. It's about reaching a point where their outcome no longer defines yours. I stopped rehearsing conversations in my head, stopped imagining explanations I'd never need to give, stopped scanning rooms for his reaction. My nervous system relaxed. That's not poetic. It's physiological. My body stopped preparing for impact that wasn't coming. One afternoon, while Ava was at a friend's house, I stood in my kitchen and realized I hadn't thought about the airport in weeks. Not the gate, not the woman, not the humiliation. The memory had lost its charge. That's when I understood what freedom actually feels like. It isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's quiet alignment. It's knowing your life no longer requires damage control. Betrayal teaches you something brutal if you let it. How much of yourself you gave away to keep someone else comfortable. Leaving taught me something better. That I didn't need to be louder, colder, or harder to survive it. I just needed to stop protecting someone who was willing to risk everything I built. Caleb didn't ruin me. He revealed the version of myself I'd been postponing. The woman who doesn't bargain with disrespect. The mother who models boundaries instead of endurance. The person who understands that love without integrity is just a transaction with delayed consequences. I didn't win. I reclaimed. And that turned out to be the only ending that mattered. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If it resonated with you, even a little, please click the hype button and let me know you felt it too. I'd really love to hear your thoughts, or even your own experience in the comments. You never know who might need to read your words today. And if you want more stories like this, real, emotional, and honest, hit the subscribe button and tap like to support the channel. Your support truly means more than you know. I'll see you in the next one.